Most residents of Cedar Lake Estates accepted one unspoken truth. The HOA board held enormous influence over the community. It enforced the rules, issued notices, and shaped the rhythm of neighborhood life. Few people questioned its authority. Fewer still wanted to become the center of its attention. That reality remained unchanged for years, until the board picked a fight with a man it had completely misunderstood. Ethan Carter's lakefront mansion was one of the most recognizable homes in the neighborhood. Sitting on the edge of the water, it overlooked the entire shoreline and stood as a symbol of quiet success. To his neighbors, Ethan appeared to be exactly what he wanted them to see. A private businessman who preferred peaceful evenings on his dock to HOA meetings and neighborhood politics. He was respectful. He paid his bills. He stayed out of trouble. And because of that, almost nobody knew the truth. Ethan's connection to Cedar Lake Estates ran far deeper than anyone imagined. The conflict began with a single letter. According to the HOA, Ethan had failed to pay his community fees. At first, he assumed it was a simple administrative error. He checked his records and quickly confirmed that every payment had been submitted on time. Confident the matter would be resolved within days, he contacted the HOA and provided proof. The correction never came. Instead, another notice arrived. Then another. Additional penalties appeared. New fees were added, and the amount he supposedly owed continued to increase despite the evidence already sitting in the HOA's hands. That was the moment Ethan realized this wasn't a bookkeeping mistake. Something else was happening. Behind the dispute stood Linda Parker, the HOA board president. Linda believed strict enforcement was the foundation of a successful community. Over the years, however, many residents had begun noticing a pattern. Rules often seemed less about consistency and more about authority. Few homeowners were willing to challenge her decisions, and those who did usually found themselves buried beneath paperwork, warnings, and endless meetings. Ethan soon became her latest target. Official notices arrived regularly. Each letter sounded more serious than the last. Deadlines were established. Consequences were outlined. Legal language filled the pages. Most homeowners would have grown frustrated or surrendered simply to end the stress. Ethan did neither. Instead, he documented everything. Every notice, every deadline, every communication, every claim. And then he waited. Weeks later, something happened that sent rumors racing through the neighborhood. Construction crews appeared near Ethan's property. Residents watched from driveways and sidewalks as trucks arrived and activity increased around the mansion. Nobody knew exactly what was happening, but everyone sensed the situation had reached a new level. Questions spread throughout Cedar Lake Estates. Had a settlement been reached? Was the property being renovated? Had the dispute somehow become even more serious? No one had answers. And through it all, Ethan remained unusually calm. While everyone else speculated, he made a single phone call. At the time, nobody paid much attention to it. Later, everyone would. Within days, attorneys, consultants, and property analysts began reviewing records connected to Cedar Lake Estates. They examined development agreements, infrastructure documents, historical contracts, and ownership records dating back decades. The deeper they looked, the more surprising the story became. What they discovered changed everything. Long before Ethan purchased his mansion, he had invested in the development company responsible for helping establish significant portions of the community. Over time, those investments expanded. Various agreements connected his business interests to important parts of the neighborhood's history and infrastructure. Most residents had never heard about it. Many board members didn't know either. The HOA believed it was dealing with a homeowner. In reality, it was dealing with someone whose relationship with the community extended far beyond property ownership. When formal correspondence reached the board, the mood inside the clubhouse changed immediately. Questions began appearing that nobody had prepared for. Had proper procedures been followed? Had every decision been reviewed correctly? Had assumptions replaced facts? Board members who once appeared completely confident suddenly found themselves studying documents they had never considered before. An emergency meeting was called. By the time residents filled the clubhouse, word had already spread throughout the neighborhood. People wanted answers. Not rumors. Not speculation. Answers. For years, many homeowners had trusted the board without question. Now, they wanted transparency. As discussions continued, independent experts were invited to review the situation. Their role wasn't to assign blame. Their role was to establish facts. They reviewed records, examined procedures, and evaluated how decisions had been made. Their findings revealed something important. Several processes lacked sufficient oversight. Certain decisions could have benefited from additional verification, and clearer communication might have prevented the entire dispute from escalating in the first place. The atmosphere inside Cedar Lake Estates began to change. Residents who had never attended meetings suddenly became involved. Neighbors started discussing issues openly. Questions that once remained private became community conversations. For the first time in years, people felt invested in how their neighborhood was governed. Then came the meeting that changed everything. The clubhouse was packed. Every seat was occupied. Homeowners lined the walls, waiting to hear what Ethan would say. Many expected anger. Others expected accusations. Some anticipated a lengthy confrontation. Instead, Ethan surprised everyone. He spoke calmly. He talked about trust, about transparency, about leadership, and about the responsibility that comes with authority. His message wasn't focused on revenge. It wasn't focused on winning. It was focused on building something better. The room listened, and for the first time since the conflict began, people stopped arguing and started thinking about solutions. The weeks that followed brought a level of community participation nobody had seen before. Open discussions replaced rumors. Ideas replaced complaints. Residents began working together to improve communication and strengthen accountability. Eventually, homeowners agreed that new leadership elections would provide the best path forward. When voting day arrived, turnout exceeded expectations. Neighbors who rarely spoke found themselves discussing shared goals. People who once felt disconnected became engaged. The community wasn't dividing. It was coming together. A new board was elected. One of its first priorities was improving transparency and increasing homeowner involvement. Communication became clearer. Processes became easier to understand, and residents appreciated the effort to rebuild trust. Meanwhile, attention slowly shifted back toward Ethan's property. Architects, engineers, and designers began planning the future. What emerged wasn't simply a rebuilding project. It became a symbol, a reminder that setbacks don't have to define outcomes. Month after month, progress became visible. Walls rose. Landscaping returned. New designs transformed the shoreline. Residents watched with growing admiration. The property that once stood at the center of controversy now represented resilience. Eventually, the project was complete. The lakefront mansion stood proudly beside the water once again. Elegant, modern, remarkable. Yet the structure itself wasn't the most important part of the story. The real transformation had happened throughout the neighborhood. Families spent more time together. Community events became more popular. Neighbors knew each other better. Trust had returned. Standing beside the lake one evening, Ethan looked across Cedar Lake Estates and reflected on everything that had happened. The journey hadn't been easy, but valuable lessons had emerged from it. Leadership matters. Transparency matters. And communities are strongest when the people who live in them remain engaged. What began as a dispute ultimately became an opportunity for growth, an opportunity for change, and an opportunity for an entire neighborhood to rediscover what truly mattered. In the end, Cedar Lake Estates didn't become stronger because of rules. It became stronger because its residents found their voice. And once they did, the future of the community was never the same again. If you enjoyed this HOA story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more HOA stories every week. What would you have done if you were in Ethan's position? And most importantly, where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below.